Hi, I'm Frederick with Dab Lab LLC, here to show you how you can maintain liquid culture and make your own grain spawn at home. This room has an air vent, so I went ahead and turned off the air conditioner. It also has a standalone HEPA filter, so I went ahead and turned that off as well to create a relatively still air environment. It's not perfect, but it works fine. So you'll want to sterilize everything with, I like to use 91% alcohol, but 70% should work fine as well. Make sure you wipe down your gloves, your surfaces, and your torch, any other equipment that you're going to be using. There are industrial grade pumps that you can use to extract the liquid culture for mass production, but today we're just going to use a simple lure port syringe. We've sterilized some extraction needles here in one of our jars with a liquid culture lid, and so you'll grab one of these to place on the syringe. Now normally I would be wearing a mask, but I would like everyone to be able to hear and understand me, so for the purpose of this video I've left it off. Sometimes I like to start peeling back the package a little bit to get it started before actually opening up both quickly and smoothly to make the union. So now that they're ready to open, you can pull out the syringe, open the dispensing extraction needle, and make the union. Made a nice tight connection here. Now we can dispose of this stuff, the packaging, and you're going to want to flame sterilize the needle. Now I know it's already been sterilized, but sometimes air, bacteria, and spores can get in, so it's a good idea to flame sterilize your needles beforehand. You don't want to melt the needle, but you can get it red hot along its length, and then you can be assured that the needle and the air inside is sterile. Bigger torch makes faster work, but just have a little bit of patience and it's fine. Set it down where the needle isn't touching anything and you're not going to be breathing on it. Now, before I started the video, I went ahead and ran the mixer. This is an electromagnetic magnetic mixer, and it just has a motor, and I put the mixing magnet inside the jar before sterilization. This allows you to break up the mycelium to make it easier to suck up into the syringe. Highly recommended, and it doesn't take much. You can see the magnet here. That's what it looks like. And then you get to stir the culture easily and break up all that mycelium. I like to use a mixture of isopropyl alcohol and hydrogen peroxide to sterilize the injection port, and then I can wipe it up with a Q-tip before doing the extraction. You also want to make sure you give this needle time to cool down, otherwise you will end up melting the rubber injection port. However, I will say that this injection port has a very high heat tolerance, and before it gets melted, what'll happen is you can end up killing your culture from the heat, trying to suck it into a hot needle. Once it hits the water, basically cool. Alright. You just want to be careful. If you're not careful, you can bend the needle inserting it. That's why you do it nice and slowly. And once it's inside, you can begin the extraction process. Gently pull up on the syringe while you move the needle around and try to get the base of the needle to be in clumps of mycelium that are nicely broken up and aren't going to cause any clogs. Okay. Now, I have completely filled the syringe, but you can see that the culture isn't 100% full. Now, this is actually plenty thick, but I'm going to show you a little trick in case you don't get as thick of a culture as you'd like in the syringe on the first go. If you want to make a thicker culture syringe and be able to inoculate more grain spawn and have faster development rates with one syringe, then what you can do, and this is going to look a little weird, but you use centrifugal force, you pull the needle out a ways and you grab it right at the union between your blunt dispensing needle or extraction needle and the syringe and shake it. And what this does is the centrifugal force pushes the mycelium to the top, and if you do it fast enough, you can get several milliliters, sometimes even half of it, almost devoid of mycelium. Now it's clumped up at the top, and you can re-inject the water, the culture medium. Lost a little bit of mycelium now, but that's okay because I'm going to re-extract it, hopefully with a slightly higher density. And this works because the syringe did not leave the culture lid or the culture jar. So it's been in a sterile environment, it's sterile going in, it's sterile coming back out. And now we have a full syringe with a fair bit more culture in it. So now we have the grain and the liquid culture ready to go for inoculation. You can take this syringe out and put a cap on it and stick it in the fridge, the refrigerator, depending on what species. A few species like the pink oysters and paddy straw and some other warm weather species really will die or don't like being put in the refrigerator. But most of your gourmet functional mushrooms will be just fine. So you can keep it in the fridge several months to a year, sometimes longer. Or you can go ahead and use it right away. Because we're maintaining our culture, today we're going to go ahead and inject a small amount into a new culture media. This is about 3.5% sugar, using a combination of maple syrup, agave nectar, and honey. These are all organic store-bought products. And here we go. Before sterilization, we use the aluminum foil to cover the lids and make sure water doesn't get into the filter. When you're doing a liquid culture transfer, this isn't necessary at all, but it does help to verify your strain if you're concerned about contamination, to inject some into a sterile jar of grain. Then you get to more easily observe any contamination, and if it's good, then you know that your liquid culture jar is good, and you can use it to inoculate more and more, however many grain spawn jars you really need. So today we're going to inoculate 2 to 3 milliliters into the liquid culture jar, and then the rest goes into the grain spawn. So first, I like to break up the grain just a little bit, make sure it's nice and loose in there so that the grain spawn, the liquid culture can permeate the grain. And let's get started. So we want to do this as smoothly and as quickly as possible. Again, what we can do is start by just starting to split it open. It's still not open, but now it's easy to grab. Pull the extraction syringe out of the original culture. You're going to want to, this can be tricky depending on how tight but you take off the needle and insert the needle as quickly and smoothly as possible. Now that the needle is on, you could have also capped it to put it in the fridge. We can shake it up, make sure the mycelium is nice and distributed. And then sterilize the needle and start the inoculation process. I'm using a 16 gauge needle in order to complement the 16 gauge extraction blunt tip needle. If you don't have alcohol and isopropyl, you can also use these alcohol pads you can pick up at Walmart or Target, wherever. Make sure you clean the injection port. Alright, now that the needle is in, we can do 2 to 3 milliliters, so and that's more than enough. It was all clumped at the bottom. It's like 1.5 milliliters. Now we're ready to inoculate the grain jar. Pull out your syringe. And when you inoculate your grain jar, you'll want to do a circular motion, but it doesn't matter too much because you can always shake up the jar right afterwards, which I recommend doing anyways. All right. Quick and nothing painless. Throw this away. I like to clean up the injection ports because sometimes a little bit of mycelium gets lodged in the hole, and that would be a vector for contamination to work its way through the self-healing port to get into your culture. A couple more drops. Use a new Q-tip. Going to dig into the injection port hole and move on to the next one. Now, of course, the final step in the process will be to label your jars. You can use masking tape and a Sharpie. You can use labels that you printed out, or you can just write on labels if you're lazy like I am. However you do it, make sure you keep track of your strains. And now this liquid culture jar has been maintained. Small amount has been transferred from this jar to this jar. We've tested the liquid culture for contamination by injecting it into grain. Contamination will show up very quickly on grain. And then when this doesn't contaminate, because pretty sure everything is just fine, then we can use this grain spawn to create some sawdust bags, as I did in other videos. All right, that's all we have for liquid cultures today. Thank you for joining, and if you have any different methods or comments on this method, please feel free to like and subscribe and leave your comment below. Love hearing about all of your different methods, and it's really about finding what works for you. It's just important to follow sterile culture technique, wear your mask, sanitize everything, try to do it in a room with a still air environment. If you can use a still air box. If you can, use a laminar flow hood. These things give you better chances of success, but for the most part, this is medical grade equipment. Our liquid culture jars use a medical grade injection port that self-heals and prevents contamination. These syringe filters allow gas exchange at a limited rate, and it's protecting from contamination using a PTFE 0.22 micron filter inside of this plastic disc. And these lids are very, very effective at keeping your cultures clean and sterile, even if you don't have a perfectly sterile laboratory. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you, and hope you have fun mushroom farming.